So questioning.
Dr. Peterson, last May, President Trump issued America's Cybersecurity Workforce Executive Order, which directed the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Homeland Security, along with the heads of other appropriate agencies, to implement the recommendations from their 2017 report on how to support growth and sustainment of the nation's cybersecurity workforce in both the public and the private sectors. So could you tell us if you're involved in implementing these recommendations, and if so, how? And are these recommendations informing the development of NICE's strategic plan for the next 5 years?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We are absolutely involved, as we were in both the development of the recommendations as well as the implementation. There were 5 imperatives, multiple recommendations and actions, and beginning by prioritizing some of them. So for example, the first one spoke to having a national call for action to make sure that both the public and private sector were recognizing the importance of cybersecurity. And by way of example, another reason that I've worked closely with IBM is several companies have come together as part of the Aspen Cybersecurity Group to issue a set of principles that they want companies to follow. And one of those principles is to use the NICE Cybersecurity Workforce Framework, but other principles are things like career discovery or doing skills-based hiring and the like. And so working collaboratively with the private sector and industry in this case to raise the importance and elevate this is one way that we're implementing it. When I talked earlier about transforming the learning process, including more of a focus on skills and less on just traditional credentials, that's another example of an emerging theme in our next strategic plan. Where learning, as many of you have described, includes not only the K through 12, the high school diploma, the community college degree, but also certifications or apprenticeships or the other multiple pathways to a career in cybersecurity. And finally, as I indicated, the Workforce Policy Advisory Board, which is part of that President's National Council on America's Workforce, will be talking more about the multiple pathways to all types of careers, but cybersecurity especially, where it could be that transitioning veteran that you described earlier that after a 20-year military career then enters cybersecurity, or it could be an IT worker who's going to, transition to a cybersecurity role. So we are actively working on both prioritizing and implementing them to the extent that we can.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, one last question for me. Could you elaborate on how IBM has utilized their apprenticeship program and how you've used that to recruit and retain cybersecurity workforce?
Sure. So we started the apprenticeship program about 4 years ago, and what we do is we've actually, especially in the cybersecurity organizations, have really looked at what are the right roles that we can really bring in talent without the 4-year degrees. So looking at the soft skills, making sure that they have those right critical skills, and leading with skills first and the capabilities over the credentials, right? And then looking at what are the right roles to bring them in. So a security operations center analyst is one, pen testers, another example, technical writers. We've been bringing people into those types of positions as a way to one, test them, make sure that they have the technical capabilities as we continue to train them up, sponsor them for certifications, et cetera. So as they come in, there is a curriculum that's built out for the first year for them that they go through and dedicated resources to support them. So it's really looking at this from a skills first basis, and it allows us to get the, those that have 4-year degrees, they tend to not be representative of the overall U.S. population demographically, right? So if we're able to bring in and really leverage the P-TECH programs, the apprenticeship programs, et cetera, we're able to tap into that underrepresented talent, whether it be based on age, gender, even veterans, et cetera. So this is definitely a way that, and the question was asked earlier, this is a way that in the future, people will be able to look up and see people that look like them at the top of the house. So it's very important to us.
Thank you. And I see I'm out of time. I yield back.
Thank you. And now we'll recognize Dr. Lipinski for 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you for holding this hearing. We all know how important this issue is, and unfortunately, it doesn't receive nearly as much attention as it should. Happy to follow the Democrat before me, Bill Foster. We share Argonne National Lab, and appreciate the great work that's being done there on cybersecurity. One particular issue I have is how medium and small manufacturers struggle to keep up with the rapid evolution of cyber attacks. It's something I hear about all the time from these manufacturers in my district. I was the Democratic lead on the NIST Small Business Cybersecurity Act, which was signed into law in 2018. The bill directed NIST to develop voluntary guidelines to help small businesses identify, manage, and reduce cybersecurity risks. NIST has since developed the Small Business Cybersecurity Corner to provide resources on this topic to small businesses. So I want to ask Mr. Peterson, can you describe the National Initiative for Cyber Education's contributions to these resources for small businesses?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we actually have one of our team members, our small team, that is assigned part-time to help support the small and medium business outreach. One is because her regular role with NICE is to do industry engagement. And again, we want to be sensitive to both the need of large enterprises as well as small and medium businesses. So she can bring both that expertise as well as kind of introduce workforce and education related topics into that small and medium business outreach. The reality is, talk about a small team like my own, the small and medium businesses have smaller teams, especially devoted to IT and cybersecurity, and are often reliant on third-party providers, service providers as well. So making sure that, for example, our NICE cybersecurity workforce framework doesn't just speak to the kind of workforce they need, but the kind of workforce that service providers need to bring to them as well, as a way we try to translate that for small to medium businesses.
Thank you. I want to follow up on that, looking more generally at bolstering cybersecurity education in manufacturing. In 2018, the administration put out the Strategy for American Leadership in Advanced Manufacturing. This was the result of a bill that I had written, that this committee had passed. It was passed into law. And so that strategy talks specifically about bolstering cybersecurity education in manufacturing. So in response, the Department of Defense launched the National Center for Cybersecurity and Manufacturing in 2018 at MXD, which is in Chicago. The center focuses on ensuring small and medium-sized manufacturers are taking the necessary precautions to protect themselves from cyber attacks and subsequent data breaches and IP theft. So, Mr. Peterson, I want to ask, as you've discussed in your testimony, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education is beginning the process of updating their 5-year strategic plan. So how will the framework leverage work done at manufacturing institutes like the Cybersecurity Center at MXD to accelerate and enhance NIST cybersecurity workforce development?
So one of the roles that NICE plays is being aware of the ecosystem that's happening across the U.S., not only geographically, but by critical infrastructure sectors or other economic sectors. And NIST also, as you know, is home to the Manufacturing Extension Partnership that helps to administer some of the manufacturing programs across the U.S. And so fortunately, in the context of my relationship with the NIST MEP office, they brought the workforce program of MDX to our attention, and we have engaged with them directly. Primarily as they go down a path of developing a workforce framework for manufacturing to create a skilled cybersecurity workforce, to recognize that the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework is a resource to them. It's a reference resource upon which all the critical infrastructure sectors can leverage and modify and adapt to meet their needs. But also we're trying to create a standardized environment across the nation for cybersecurity work that can help education and training providers as well as employers to have that common taxonomy. So I'm glad to say we've worked with them very collaboratively on trying to encourage them to use our existing framework as a foundation for what they do. But secondly, as you indicate, both as we update our NICE framework and our next strategic plan, then any feedback or input that they have to provide to us, that we're more than happy to receive that as well. We did just complete a request for comment period, and are going to be looking at the comments received as a way to collect that public input.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Mr. Peterson, and all of our witnesses.